Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at Aristotle and Dante dive into the waters of the world.
Oh, yeah. This one picks up after the first book, and
Exactly, a
it's
sequel.
even deeper.
And we're going to be talking about some excerpts today.
Definitely a lot to unpack in this one.
There is, I was really interested in the way that Ari's feelings for Dante are portrayed in these excerpts.
Yeah.
It's not just like, the typical kind of butterfly.
Like puppy love.
No. Yeah, and he even says at one point,
It's visceral.
yeah, love didn't just have something to do with my heart. It had something to do with my body. And so he's really going through this kind of intense physical awakening as well.
Definitely. And that ties into the whole theme of self-discovery and figuring out your identity.
Right. And it makes you wonder, too, like how much of his struggle is internal versus like how much of it is because of the world around him.
Oh, absolutely. Because you have to think about the time period and the setting and the expectations of society back then.
Right. And it's interesting, too, because Dante is so much more outwardly expressive and confident.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to have as much of that internal struggle, at least on the surface.
Yeah, at least not at first.
Right?
There's that one scene where they're driving home after falling asleep in the pickup truck.
Oh, yeah.
And Dante's really quiet. And Ari wonders if maybe he's always been afraid, just like him.
It's kind of a turning point because you realize that Dante does have his own vulnerabilities.
Right.
He's not just this carefree spirit all the time.
Exactly. And it makes you think about, those things that we don't always say out loud.
The unspoken things.
Yeah. And speaking of unspoken things, Ari's family life seems to have a lot of that going on.
Oh, definitely. There's so much going on beneath the surface with his parents, especially his father.
Yeah. It seems like his dad is holding back a lot of, pain from the past.
The author hints at some pretty significant trauma there.
Right. And it really affects the way they interact with each other.
You can feel the tension and the distance between them.
There's a scene where Ari's mom talks about her love for her deceased son, and she describes it as being silent, filled with unspoken things. It seems like silence is a big theme.
It really is. It makes you think about the role of silence in communication and in relationships in general.
I wonder if that's something specific to their family or if it's, maybe a cultural thing.
It's probably a bit of both. Every family has its own dynamic, but then you also have the cultural context to consider.
Right. And maybe their Mexican-American heritage plays a part in that, too.
It's certainly possible. There are often cultural norms around expressing emotions.
And, it makes me wonder if part of why Ari is drawn to Dante is because he's so different from that.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. Like maybe he sees in Dante a freedom that he doesn't feel within his own family.
Exactly. And that could be both exciting and scary for him.
Definitely, because it challenges everything he's known and believed.
And we see that play out in how their families react to their relationship.
Oh, for sure. Particularly Dante's sexuality.
Right. Ari's mom seems really supportive.
Yeah, she's very accepting.
But his dad's reaction is a little more complicated.
It's definitely more nuanced. You can sense his internal struggle.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything directly negative,
but you can feel that tension.
Yeah, it makes you think about those generational differences and attitudes.
Absolutely. And remember that conversation Dante has with his dad about his future baby brother.
Oh, right. Where he says he wants him to be everything he's not.
It's such a heartbreaking moment because you can see how much Dante just wants to be accepted for who he is.
Yeah, and his dad's reaction is so telling, too.
He's literally in tears. It's like he's mourning the life he thought his son would have.
And that really highlights the conflict between societal expectations and personal acceptance.
Yeah, and how those tensions can play out within families.
But even with all of that going on, you can still see the love in Dante's family.
His mom is amazing. She brings in this humor and reminds us that families are messy, but love can still prevail.
It's a good reminder, and I also thought it was interesting that Ari's mom encourages him to keep a journal.
Oh, yeah. That becomes a really important part of the story.
Do you think she's kind of intuitively understanding that he needs an outlet?
I think so. She knows he's not one to talk about his feelings easily.
Yeah, so she's giving him a safe space to process everything that's going on.
It becomes this private space for him to explore his thoughts and emotions.
So you have this contrast between the silence within his family and then the space for expression in his journal.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder if that tension plays into his attraction to Dante's expressiveness.
That's a good point. Like maybe he's drawn to that because it's something he doesn't have in his own life.
It's definitely something to consider. And it speaks to how our personal experiences can shape the kinds of connections we seek out.
It's fascinating to think about all the different factors that contribute to our relationships.
Definitely, it's not always simple or straightforward.
And in this story, it's clear that those relationships play a huge role in shaping who Ari and Dante become.
And that's what makes it so compelling to read.
I agree, and I'm looking forward to diving deeper into those relationships as we continue our discussion.
Me too. There's still so much to explore.
It's interesting how much things change when Dante goes off to Chicago.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift in the whole mood of the story.
Like a void.
Yeah, and you see Ari going through the motions, but he's clearly not the same.
Yeah, he's struggling, and his dreams are so intense during this time.
Oh yeah, they're filled with all this symbolism and anxiety.
There's that one where he sees Dante, like, gaunt and dying from AIDS.
Oh gosh, yeah, and there's a mob chanting faggots.
It's really disturbing.
It really reflects the fear and prejudice surrounding AIDS at the time.
It's like he's internalizing all that negativity.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about how societal pressures can really affect our mental and emotional well-being.
And it's no wonder he starts questioning his own identity.
He even wonders if the world would be better off without him and Dante.
It's heartbreaking.
It is, but it also reflects a very real struggle that many LGBTQ+ individuals faced during that era.
It's a reminder of how harmful stigma and prejudice can be.
Exactly. But amidst all of that darkness, there are also glimmers of hope.
Like his friendship with Cassandra.
Oh yeah, she becomes such an important figure in his life during this time.
They go on these morning runs together.
It's like they find solace in each other's company.
And they've both experienced loss in different ways.
Right. Cassandra lost her brother to AIDS, and Ari is dealing with the absence of Dante.
And the fear of losing him, too.
It creates a really strong bond between them.
They understand each other's pain in a way that nobody else can.
And it's interesting how running becomes this metaphor for their journeys.
Like they're literally and figuratively moving forward.
Trying to process everything that's happened.
And as he's going through all of this, Ari also starts becoming more aware of social injustices around him.
Yeah, he's not just focused on his own problems anymore.
Like when Summer gets in trouble for promoting birth control.
Oh, right. That was such a powerful scene.
It shows how much control society tries to exert over women's bodies.
And their choices.
And then there's the fight in the parking lot where Ari and Danny defend the gay couple.
That felt like a real turning point for Ari.
Yeah, he's not just standing by and letting things happen anymore.
He's taking action.
Even if it means getting into trouble.
Which he does with Mrs. Hendricks.
It's kind of ironic because she's the one who left him in charge.
Right, but it also highlights the power dynamics at play.
Yeah, those in authority often hold those with less power accountable.
Even when it's not really their fault.
It makes you think about how those power imbalances can play out in different situations.
But even with all the conflict and tension, there are still these moments of kindness.
Like when Ari takes the centerpiece to the Quintana's house.
Oh yeah, that was a small gesture, but it meant a lot.
I think he was trying to maintain that connection with Dante.
Even though he was far away.
And Mr. Quintana's reaction was so sweet.
He really encourages Ari to open up and be himself.
It's nice to see him getting that kind of support.
Especially from a father figure.
And then there's that Christmas Eve goodbye.
Oh man, that one was tough.
So much unspoken emotion.
And a sense of finality.
Like they both know things are changing.
And the gift exchange is really meaningful.
Dante gives Ari a book of poetry.
And Ari gives Dante a bottle of his dad's bourbon.
It felt like a symbol of their bond.
Yeah, something that connected them even though they were apart.
But then right after that, we get the news about Rico's death.
Oh gosh, it's such a stark reminder of how fragile life is.
It really shakes Ari up.
It forces him to confront his own mortality.
And he starts thinking about the meaning of life.
His journal entries get really deep during this time.
It's like he's going through this huge transformation.
Trying to figure out who he is and what he believes in.
And then he decides to visit his brother in Colorado.
Yeah, that was a brave decision.
He's seeking answers.
And he ends up learning a lot about his family history.
Especially about his father.
That campfire scene is so powerful.
Where his dad opens up about his experiences in Vietnam.
And the advice he gives Ari about being a man.
It's such a profound moment.
It feels like a turning point in their relationship.
Like they're finally understanding each other.
And then his dad dies suddenly.
It's another devastating loss for Ari.
It feels like his whole world is falling apart.
But he finds strength in his family and friends.
And he keeps searching for meaning.
It's really inspiring to see his resilience.
It shows the human capacity for growth, even in the face of tragedy.
At this point, it feels like Ari's kind of in between, you know?
Yeah, like he's not a boy anymore, but he's not quite an adult.
Not quite a man. Yeah.
There's this uncertainty about who he is and what he wants.
And it's all tied up with his grief and his relationship with Dante.
And his family, too.
Yeah.
He's still trying to figure out where he fits in.
And remember that part where he tells Dante about wanting to make a speech at graduation?
Oh, yeah, about being gay.
Yeah.
And how it's not his problem.
But then he doesn't actually do it.
It's like he's not quite ready to be that open about it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what's holding him back.
I think it's a lot of things. Fear, uncertainty.
Right.
Maybe a sense of not being fully comfortable with himself yet.
Yeah, and it shows that coming out is a process.
It's different for everyone.
There's no right way to do it.
Exactly. And for Ari, it seems like he needs more time.
Yeah, he's still figuring things out.
But even though he doesn't make that speech, he is showing more empathy towards others.
Like with Julio, when he confides in Ari about being gay.
Yeah, Ari's response is so different now.
He's actually supportive.
He's learned from his own experiences.
And he's trying to help Julio avoid some of the pain that he went through.
It's great to see him growing like that.
But he's still carrying a lot of hurt from his relationship with Dante.
Especially after finding out about the bourbon incident.
Yeah, that really shook him.
It made him question everything.
And then on top of that, Dante tells him he's going to Paris.
Oh man, that was a tough blow.
It brought up all those insecurities again.
Like he's being left behind.
And he takes it out on Cassandra.
He kind of lashes out at her.
It's understandable, though,
Of course he's hurting.
He doesn't know how to deal with it.
And Cassandra's so patient with him.
Yeah, she just suggests they go to a movie.
She knows he needs a distraction.
And then he goes to visit Dante's parents.
And they give him the letter.
Ugh, that letter.
So much anticipation.
What's going to be in there?
Is it going to explain everything?
And then he doesn't even read it.
He just decides to go to Paris.
It's such a bold move.
He's following his heart.
No matter what.
And his arrival in Paris is so vivid.
Yeah, it's like he's stepping into a whole new world.
All those sights and sounds.
And then he meets Gerald.
That professor who was friends with Dante's dad.
Yeah, he's kind of like a mentor figure.
He helps Ari see Dante in a different light.
And he encourages him to find his own path.
To be true to himself.
And then finally, Ari finds Dante by the Seine.
That moment you've been waiting for.
It's so intense.
They've both changed so much.
But there's still that connection between them.
And they walk along the river hand in hand.
And then it starts raining.
That downpour.
They're clinging to each other.
It's such a powerful image.
Like they've weathered the storm together.
And come out stronger on the other side.
And that last line about the lessons of the heart.
Oh, yeah?
It's beautiful.
It really sticks with you.
So what are your final thoughts on this whole deep dive?
Well, I think it's a really powerful story about love and loss and finding your place in the world.
I agree, and I hope our listeners feel inspired to check it out for themselves.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack and think about.
It's definitely a book that stays with you.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into Aristotle and Dante with you all.